Hello, is this thing on? I have no idea what I am doing, but the coffee is good. And this is my first video, so maybe a little about me. I'm a software developer for a robotics company during the day. At night, I'm a single gay dad to this adorable little 10-year-old who doubles as my partner in crime and my QA department. And he is brutal. This kid doesn't let me get away with anything. This is my basement and my shop. I built the barn door, and yes, that's a sheet of plywood waiting for my next project. My shop is in my basement, and it is about 150 square feet. Not very big. I would like to say that my tools are carefully curated through the last 10 years, but truth be told, they are just tools I was able to buy when I could afford them. I am nowhere near the folks who have professional shops like, I don't know, Real Dust Collection, but I work hard in here making things, and I would like to think that what I can do in 150 square feet makes other people happy. It's such a mess, but it is mine. This is where the creative juices and wood glue spread everywhere. I literally have wood glue everywhere, and you will soon see why. So as you've probably been able to figure out, we're going to be building a cutting board today. Got a couple species we're working with here. This is a black walnut, rough sawn, so we're going to need to mill that and square it off. I have a couple pieces of cut off walnut from a previous project, so we're just going to go ahead and use that. I have a piece of purple heart, which I'm super excited to use because it's a great species. And I have Padauk. Padauk is red. It's got a mahogany kind of finish to it, but it's not quite as dark red. And as you can see, this piece didn't quite measure up, so don't think we're going to end up using that one. So this is my new jointer. It's from a company called Wen, and I got it online. Actually think I ordered it from Amazon. It was pretty short money, about 300 bucks. It is a 6-inch joiner with a spiral head cutter. It's my very first time using it, and I discovered that the dust collection wouldn't work. The ports actually weren't the right size, so it didn't plug in to my wet dry vac. So we were just going to shoot wood shards all over the shop. Not that this isn't anything new. Never trust a woodworker with a clean shop, just saying. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and start sending the black walnut through. I am working it over and over, and if you listen to the blade, if the blade is cutting all the way through, then you pretty much have a flat surface. What I'm noticing though is when I'm sending it through, the fence is not completely lined up with the table, so it's creating this really strange lip. So what I need to do is go ahead and adjust that. With the table and fence properly aligned, I continue sending my stock through to level off one side or to surface one side so we can use that as a reference side. At this point, it's really important to mark the sides that we're using so that we know which side is completely flat as we move forward. At this point, we are ready to start ripping our stock to the final dimensions. The width of the stock isn't really important here unless you're doing a end grain cutting board, which I will do another video. End grain cutting boards, specifically how you're breaking down the stock is pretty important. So at this point, we're just breaking it down to something that makes sense. I'm keeping these small cut-off pieces as I'm breaking it down because I'm actually going to use those as spacers in the final product. With all of our stock milled down, now is the part where we try to figure out a pattern that makes sense. This is a personal thing. You'll find one that you like, you'll find one that you don't like, pop out certain pieces of wood. For instance, I decided I wanted the purple heart to be the center of the board, but I was trying to find the Padauk where it made most sense for that red stripe to be. I didn't really like it right there, but we figured it out eventually, and it ended up being right on the other side of the maple. With the final assembly all set, it was time to begin the glue up. So at this point, we rip out 3 of my bar clamps. We set up exactly how we want it to go. So this is exactly what it's going to look like. And I started to spread glue. What you can't see here is that I'm using Type Bond 2 glue when I'm not supposed to be using that. So you're going to see in a second here, I'm going to make a mistake and I'm going to go ahead and wipe off all of that glue and we're going to start using Type Bond 3. So woodworkers, when they're making wood projects, especially cutting boards, Type on 3, there it is. Type on 3 is exactly what you're supposed to be using. It's food safe and it has a slower setup time. So that is what you're supposed to be using for cutting boards. And I completely screwed up and used the wrong glue, but I quickly, luckily it only happened on one piece. I was able to recover, use Type on 3, and then finish the glue up. I'm going to go ahead and speed up through this. It is a long, arduous process to do the glue. What we want to do is we want to glue up both sides. What you're looking for is to make sure that you have a really good glue bond. But as you can probably see from my pants, I have glue all over the place, and this is why glue is all over my shop. I really do make a mess when it comes to this particular part of the process. But the more glue you add, the better the seam. So it is not a time for you to be skimpy on the glue that you're going to be using. So let's go ahead and clamp that all together. We're looking for a really good squeeze out. The good squeeze out means we've got a really good bond in those particular joints. But what you're going to notice is the board tries to lift a little as I'm trying to clamp it here. And what I'm going to quickly realize as I'm checking now, it's got a little bit curved to it. So we're going to add a caul to straighten it back out again so that we're good to go. We have waited the obligatory 24 hours. I think I only waited 18 on this one because I'm impatient. We're going to remove the caul and we're going to pull it off of the frame. Now, when we go to loosen it here, what we're trying to listen for is we need to make sure that it's not making a lot of cracking or popping sounds. The cracking or popping sounds means that you didn't get a really good joint. So if it comes out relatively easily without a lot of movement, then you know you got really good coverage. And the board is a total mess at this point. What we're going to do is send it through the planer next to clean off all the edges and get it looking the way it should. So you're going to kind of have to forgive me on this one a little bit. I sent the board through the planer, and seeing as I'm a total noob to how this all works, I forgot to hit record on the camera. So I didn't get any really good planer videos, but that's what the board ended up looking like. The Padauk, the red Padauk and the purple heart came out really nice. I'm adjusting the blade to make sure that the height would cut through, but I forgot to adjust for the crosscut sled. Now you will have to forgive me for this crosscut sled. It is old. It is a mess. I had some water in my basement a few years ago, so it's a little bit weird, but I've had it for about 6 years and it still serves its purpose. So at this point, what we're going to do is we're going to try to square off the board. And one of the things I'm going to quickly notice is I adjusted the blade height for the board, but forgot to take into account the thickness of the crosscut sled. So as you can see, as I'm going through, I'm going to very quickly realize right about here that the blade is not high enough. So we're gonna have to adjust. So first time, that didn't quite work. Second time, second time's a charm. And then we're gonna go ahead and square this off. So we're gonna do this on both sides to get a nice square cutting board. We're going to go ahead and chamfer the edges on this. I usually go with a round over bit, but I felt like the board needed a clean line. Be very careful when you're using a chamfer bit against the end grain. You're not looking for any sort of chip out, so it's really important that your blades are sharp and your router is up to snuff. At this point is usually when most woodworkers would put in some sort of juice um, line in it, as well as a handle to hold it. I like clean cutting boards. I don't really mind not having a juice overflow or a pickup point. So for me, this was the end point of this, and I really enjoyed it. We're going to go ahead and sand this at 150 grit. The blade that I use for my planer is a bit old, so it creates kind of a snipe at the very beginning and the end of the board, something that can easily be taken care of for the sander, but you want to start with a rougher grit like 150 to get you going. With everything kind of rough sanded, the last thing to do is lift the grain. Really important step for woodworkers, especially when it comes to cutting boards and things that you're looking for a really smooth surface. So what you're going to essentially do is spray the top of the wood with a bunch of water. Now what this is going to do is it's going to lift those end fibers straight up on top. So when your final coat, I do a 220, but when you do your final coat of sanding, even at a 220, what it's going to do is it's going to sand off those rough spots. I know seems like a trivial thing, but it's really important. Some woodworkers like to use a blow dryer or a heat gun to try to get it to dry a little more. I think that's unnecessary. It only takes about 15 minutes for the board to dry out, and then you can go back to sanding. With the grain lifted, we're going to do that final set of sanding. We're going to go to 220. We're going to go over the entire board all the way around, and then we're going to move on to finishing. This is the oh so satisfying part of the project. You're going to apply mineral oil. Straight up mineral oil. You can get it by the gallon on Amazon. That's where I order it from. I'm using a foam applicator brush here because I want to let that board soak up as much mineral oil as it can. This is the point in the project where you get to see those wood grains come through. You get to see the dark, kind of chocolatey color of the walnut against the Padauk and the purple of the Purple Heart. So it really is a very satisfying part of the process. Now it's really important here to let that board soak up as much as it wants in that mineral oil because that's going to weather the board and it's going to protect it and kind of season the board, same as you would with a cast iron pan. The final step in any board, I haven't added the feet yet on this, but it's coming up. That is butcher block butter. What that is a combination of beeswax and mineral oil on a one-to-one base. So the beeswax is going to provide a preventative coating all across the board. It's really, really super important to do it. The mineral oil is the same thing as the finish, but you're going to want to do this on a regular basis. So you're going to take this, and what's going to happen is throughout the life of your cutting board, you're going to make notches, you're going to make cuttings, there's going to be blade marks in your board. And the butcher block butter, the beeswax, ends up closing those cuts and allowing the board to give you a flatter surface to work with. So all you're going to want to do here is you're just going to basically want to rub it in as much as you can and kind of buff it out to a nice sheen. What you're going to see is a gigantic mistake here in a minute where I knock over that whole entire jar and it falls on the ground and breaks. So I need to make a new batch. And there goes the bottle. Good job, Paul. On the floor, complete mess. Craziness, I need to clean up, and I need to make some new butcher block oil. And the last step is to go ahead and put some rubber feet on the board. I use these, again, I picked them up on Amazon. They're just little clear feet, but what really I like about them is you can adjust them. So if the board has just the slightest bit of curve to it, so you're not getting a flat surface, you can back off the screw or tighten the screw to kind of offset and make sure that the cutting board is nice and flat and safe against your work surface. And with that being said, it's time for the glamour shots.